Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ion Cannon Podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld for lore, discussion, and the High Republic, and all that good stuff from the galaxy far, far away. My name is Joel, and this week will be a tad different, as Matthew will be absent. But don't worry, we have her, the wonder from down under herself. So give everyone a day there to Hannah.
Oh, good day there. Hello, Joel, and hello, everyone. It's
Hello.
great to be here. I
Mhm.
should have worn the Blue Jays hat now that I think about it, because then I could have been half like Matthew at least. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and it's gonna be a great conversation. It's gonna be a good time.
Yes, yes, of course. Oh, and we even have commenters already. Grand Admiral Master Thrawn. That's awesome. Hello,
Love
everyone out
it.
there. Um, of course, as always, you can follow us on our socials. You can follow me at JID2021. Oops.
Oh,
This is gonna be a little different, folks, because normally Matthew handles the banner stuff. So, you had you would
he's the
be.
banner guy, so you
I
have to.
know.
That's your job. Unless I, no, I don't think I could do it actually.
And of course, you can follow the Ion Cannon Pod at Ion Cannon Pod. And finally, for more fun discussion, you can always follow us on the Star Wars Underworld Discord, where this Friday we will be playing Fortnite.
Ooh,
Woo!
ooh.
Hannah, do you have any plugs for us before we begin?
Woo! Check out the race side.
Yeah, check it.
RAE side. You bet. Lots of fun having over there. And yeah, that's about it. Just and it's the same on all the socials as well. So it's pretty easy. Just one word. Amazing.
Yes, yes. So we're having lots of fun. We're gonna be skipping the week of Star Wars because I know Hannah, you have something very special coming up for us in an hour. Unless you had
Yeah.
something very fun, Star Wars happen to you this week that you want to mention before we get into like a little bit of news.
Something fun Star Wars. That is such a great question. Well, over the weekend that has just
Mhm.
passed, I did attend the Comic Con in Sydney, which was
Ooh.
awesome. So that was really fun. I didn't get to like meet anyone or do anything, but I just had a really great time walking around the show floor. Saw some great cosplays. Saw a Clone Trooper Fives.
Ooh.
I always forget what's the character's name. You'll know this.
Maybe.
The big guy, the big hairy white-haired creature from Rogue One. What's that
Oh,
creature's name? Do you know that?
oh shoot.
Oh,
Shoot.
this is a good trivia question for you then.
Forget. I know who you're talking about though.
Yeah, but
Uh
that guy, and he's got the long hair or girl, I don't know what the creature is, but there was a cosplay of that from the 501st, which was really fun and really fun to
Moroth.
see.
That is his name.
Moroff, there you go.
He's
There
one of
you go.
Saw Gerrera's partisans. So that
Yes, that's
sounds
yeah.
awesome. Yes, that sounds awesome. That's great. We have a little bit of news. I did not put this one in the. You know what? I did not put this one in the banner, but because I didn't expect it. But the writers have finally
Yes,
made a tentative
yes.
agreement with the WGA. The actual deal itself has yet to be officially worded and ratified. So that means the strike is still technically ongoing, but they have
Mm.
stopped picketing. And hopefully soon the riders will vote on the deal and hopefully get back to work soon. Although the SAG after strike is still in effect. So obviously keep supporting the actors until they get their fair shot. Hannah,
Mm.
do you have any
Mm.
have you any reaction to this? We have been covering the writer strike for quite some time on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's like it's a massive positive. It's what we've been waiting for. They've been on, I think it was 146 days by
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, or at least, and it's been a very long time for them. There's been a lot of pain. There's, I think a lot of people have been out of work more than just the writers. It's affecting everyone, and so it should. And everyone's been fantastic in solidarity to show their support. And I love that it doesn't just end here because we still like what you just said, the SAG-AFTRA community want their fair rights met as well. So the fight goes on, but also I think it is really exciting to celebrate this win for the riders. It's very exciting.
The fight goes on indeed.
It's like the
Well,
rebellion.
I
It's like
know.
Rogue One.
I know it is feel like the rebellion in a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of ways.
yeah.
All these unions coming together.
Beautiful.
Um, but on a awkward, well, I think it's not awkward transition, but certainly more funny transition. One last bit of news that kind of talks about this current discussion we're going to do. There's going to be a new Star Wars Revelation one shot coming out in 2023. From Marvel Comics. And I have here, I sadly cannot post the actual news thing because, again, technicals. That was always Matthew's job. I only learned the basics this yesterday. Um, great podcasting, everyone. The show must go on, though. The show
Show
must go
must
on.
go on. I love it.
Oh yeah, Marvel's new Star Wars
Wow.
revelation to offer a glimpse at what is to come. Always in motion, the future is, but it's coming in focus. Marvel Star Wars Revelation 2023 number 1, arriving December 20th, will offer a sneak peek at what lies ahead in Star Wars comics galaxy. Similar to last year's one-shot of the same name, 2023's edition Revelation will feature very short tales that set the stage for Marvel Star Wars line in the coming year. The creating lineup includes Mark Guggenheim, Charles Soule, Greg Pak, Mark Bernardin, Alyssa Wong, Ethan Sachs, and Kevin Scott, with Salvador
Nice.
LaPorta, Will Slini, Marka Cresta, Ibrahim Robertson, and more handling art duties. Get your
You're doing a
first.
great job.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pronouncing names is
These are-
hard.
yeah.
You can get the first look at Road Race cover below. I wish I had the cover. I do not know how Matthew gets the cover, but it's a
How
cool
does he
little
do it?
cover. I don't know. It's like he
Dunno.
puts it. He puts it in the thing, and I don't. I
Magic
should have
guy.
asked
Yeah.
him. I should have asked him. I apologize. But there's gonna be some interesting stuff. You got Jabba the Hutt in the center. You got Leia, Vader, Luke, Lando. But you also got Mace Windu. There's a hooded guy, Vader. But the most interesting of them all is Grand Admiral Thrawn. Grand Admiral Thrawn on the cover. So could this mean
There you
a
go.
Thrawn comic in the future, which we haven't
Ooh.
had in a very long time?
That'd be very exciting.
In fact,
Good
the last-
stuff.
In fact, perfect transition. Oh, go ahead, Hannah.
I was going to say, when was the last one? When was the last comic?
The last comic was an adaptation of the current book we're about to talk about, the 2017 Thrawn book.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's a Star Wars Thrawn comic of this book, which we are going to talk about. But before I guess we talk about it, do you have you been keeping up with the comics, Hannah? Do you have anything?
I don't. I'm not a comic person, so I haven't been
Mhm.
keeping up with it. I do at least like see what they're releasing, like see what stories they're exploring with the comics.
Mhm.
And it is always interesting to be like, oh, okay, that's the direction, or like this is the era or the time or set of characters that they're kind of exploring right now. It's very
Mhm.
interesting, but I don't personally read them myself, but always interesting to note.
That is fair. That is fair. But yes, a last Thrawn comic was an adaptation of the 2017 Tim Zahn Thrawn novel. Yes, we're doing one of our many look backs in canon. And you're gonna get the book. I have the
Get the book
books.
out.
I think I have the. Do I have the book?
Do you have it? I feel like we should both be holding it. To be like,
Let's
this
see. I
is-
might not be able to reach it.
Smells-
Dang it! Nope, it's too high up in my bookshelf. Dang it!
Oh yeah,
It's
I think I can see it. I think yeah.
there.
There it is. There it is. Yeah. Nice.
right there. Yeah. So yeah, one of our look backs in canon. So how we like to begin is we like to first look back at what was going on back then. So the 2017
Oh, yeah.
Thrawn novel, I think. Yeah. So that was announced in 2016, I believe. Yes, I think so because Star Wars Rebels Season 3 just got that trailer. I remember that trailer well. Oh man, I remember that trailer well. Remember just the excitement
Oh,
of
man.
seeing Thrawn show up. I wasn't there,
Mm.
obviously, but I saw it online. Just everyone lost their minds. I lost my mind. It's like, oh my god! And then, it's like not
Mm.
only the trailer, but then Tim Zahn's coming back. Thrawn 2017. Oh my god, a
Mm.
Thrawn book by the man himself. But Hannah, I'll throw it to you. What do you remember of that time when the book was announced? If you remember.
Well,
all
yeah,
those years
that's the
ago.
thing. I don't think I quite remember when the book was announced, but obviously that year, that this kind of time of Star Wars was very interesting. Of course, a lot of the conversation being around the movies,
Mhm.
especially with Last Jedi coming out in December. When did the book come out of 2017? Do you know what month? Do you know
I
what month it
don't
came
know.
out?
I
I
do know it was
wonder in-
announced before Rogue One came out. Let's see. This came out in April 11th
Okay.
of 2017.
April
So
11th.
after Rogue
Okay.
One.
All right. Yeah, after Rogue One and before The Last Jedi, which was a really quite an interesting time of Star Wars, I think, for fans, because there was quite a bit going on of different eras. We had, Force Awakens has been out for a few years. There's this whole other era we've been introduced into, but we're in the era of Rebels was really kind of getting its roots down and people were loving Rebels. And then
Mhm.
the Rogue One movie is maybe not like massive numbers, but people really love that movie and it was a very like easy to watch Star Wars movie for I think a lot of people. So it was an interesting context, I think, for Star Wars fans. And yeah, but I can't remember this book being announced, but
Mhm.
into the context was very interesting. I think it was the right decision to make a series or a trilogy like this at right now, like for that time.
Yeah, and so I'll ask you, Hannah, what has been your relationship with Thrawn? You've
Ooh,
known Thrawn. I'm sure you have your
ooh,
tea and
a
coffee.
relationship with
But,
Thrawn.
but what? Yeah, what I mean by like like what is in your history with this
Mm,
character as a Star Wars fan?
yeah.
How much have you known about him? Have you always been a fan, or just kind of have you been discovering him through the new canon stuff?
Yes, I'm one of those that has discovered him through the new canon, and
Mhm.
I know that's blasphemy to a lot of Legends fans, but I think I was still quite young. Like I was about 17 when that book was coming out, so I think I at very much like teenage years was very focused on the visual media, so I didn't really kind of pay too much attention to all the extra books, especially even like EU and Legends books. And then going obviously into the Disney era to the canon stuff. I wasn't too like connected in to all that extra content in the books and comics we were getting. So in Rebels was my introduction to this character, and I from the get go loved him. It was, I think it's a pretty hard task to where we have Emperor Palpatine,
Mhm.
Darth Vader for
Mhm.
many, many years being the most foreboding or iconic villains, and then to still
Mhm.
within Star Wars create such an interesting villain, I think would have been a difficult task. But I mean, Timothy Zahn, and then obviously like learning that, oh, this he wasn't created right now. He's been around for like 20 years at that point. Because when was like the first Thrawn books were like 99,
1991,
91 even. My
mhm,
gosh. Like so
before I
it's
was born.
that's nuts. That's been around for so long. So, yeah, it was an awesome moment being like, "Oh, this isn't invented now. Like this has been around for a long, long time." Um, and especially like, yeah, seeing him in Rebels and then really looking into his character, and then from that kind of looking into Timothy Zahn's kind of relationship with the character to be like, "Oh, this guy's been really instrumental." And it's only been recently since I've been diving into the behind the scenes of things, realizing how um they've really involved Timothy Zahn from the publishing perspective into the visual media, which is quite like we haven't really seen that too much in Star Wars. It's not like they're bringing all the legends writers into the room as they're making the Boba Fett show. Like it's a really interesting thing how involved he has been, especially for Rebels. And yeah, I think I just really respect the creation of this character. I think that's what I'm kind of getting at here. It's like he's such a well constructed character, and it's um, I've loved him since I first see him. Yeah, so that's pretty
Yeah,
much I've loved
it's
him ever since. Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned, like Star Wars had these great villains since, of Palpatine and Vader, um, that was sort of Thrawn's big claim to fame in the original Heir of the Empire in 1991 was, okay, who's going to be the next villain that Luke, Han, and Leia got to fight after the Emperor? Who comes
Mm,
after that? And that is sort of Thrawn's biggest claim to fame is he's the villain after the Emperor, and he kind of stuck the most out of all the
yeah.
other attempts. Um, so that has always been something. I think that has always been kind of his big claim to fame, like a villain that came after the Emperor and
Mm,
kind of had to lead the forces of the Empire against, at that time, with the New Republic.
mm,
That's just the original Thrawn novel, and I think one of the reasons why they have involved Tim Zahn quite a lot is unlike characters like Boba Fett, who kind of don't have like a singular person kind of backing them. Thrawn has
mm.
always been under Thrawn. Thrawn has always been under. Hey, this is gonna happen. I always
I love it. You want such a good train of thought too. It all
Thrawn.
came at once.
Thrawn is
Sorry.
always under Zahn's kind of supervision because that is his character. That is always Zahn has overseen Thrawn's evolution from 1991 to
Mm,
today, really. Like, he's
yeah.
sort of all Thrawn books have kind of only been written by Timothy Zahn, really.
Mm,
He hasn't had any really other authors kind of take a spit whack at him, with I guess the exception now of Dave Filoni, on the screen
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's what another reason why that makes him special. Um, but yeah, Thrawn's legacy goes back so long, and it's just
So
so
long.
cool.
91. Oh, so
For
long ago.
historical context, people, the Soviet Union was still a thing. There's your. I know that's why I like books. I know that makes us feel old.
That is like a very shocking point of reference. Like, it's like, geez, wow. There you go. There you go.
Well, we're gonna
Anyway.
dissolve that year, but that's not till December. But that's a whole different story. But yeah. So, this book in particular is a very interesting one because Tim
Mm,
Zahn very much writes Thrawn as if really nothing changed between Legends and canon in his mind.
right.
Like, he's gone out and said, this is a very Legends friendly book. He still considers a lot of Thrawn's origins and stuff to be quite canonical with the character, more or less. There are even references to like some of the prequel era books that Tim Zahn wrote that involve Thrawn that take place before this book in a timeline wise
Mm,
fashion. Um, but yeah, I'll just ask you, Hannah, just overall,
yes.
what we'll start big and we go small, as we like to do here. What did you think of the
Love
book?
it.
Just what did you just think of this book?
Let's go with even should I rank it? Should I rank it out of 10 right now? Should I
If you
start?
want, we don't rank it. We don't rank here, but if you want to
We
rank
don't
it,
rank
go
it.
ahead. I can't
Uh,
stop you.
I kind of I did some sort of ranking. I already forgot what I ranked it, but I think it would probably be a 7.5 to 8 for me. Um, really interesting journey of Thrawn. I think it does such a great
Mhm,
um characterization of him. I think it does really good to kind of summarize
mhm,
how we get to see him where he's at Rebels.
mhm,
Um and I think the book was quite well written. There's a few bits that I'm like, yeah, and like not as like enthusiastic about, but majority of this book, I was having a great time. I was excited to see what was next. It was kind of different kind of periods. There was kind of a few time jumps between things, so it was always interesting to see kind of how he grew into the role he was in. So, it's a really good journey of who Thrawn is, and I think especially if you are introduced to Thrawn as an on-screen character, like I was in,
mhm,
you see him in Rebels. I think this is such a great, like, perfectly written book for that kind of demographic of, like, people that's like, "Oh, I wonder if there's more about him. I'll read this book." And that book that this book does it so well of just a good continuation of like, "Oh, yeah, this is the Thrawn we've seen in the show. This is more about him."
mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm solid. I'm pretty positive review of it. Yeah.
So I'm curious, Hannah, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but as a Star Wars fan, you seem
Yes.
like kind of Star Wars fan who really likes the fantasy of Star Wars, the lightsabers, the
Yeah.
Force, the mysticism.
Yes.
What was it like reading this book? Because Tim Zahn has always been known to be far more a science fiction writer. He tends to write the Star Wars galaxy less magical, for lack of a good term, kind of more down to earth, about the science, about the tactics.
Mm,
Very what the profession, even down to like how the military operates is a lot more sectarian, how an actual military operates, not just oh, you're a commander now, Khan, because you did something cool. It's like no, this is like chain of
yeah.
command. Everything. Did you notice, like, a certain type of tone with this book in terms of,
Ooh,
like, being
that's
a
a great
little less
question.
of a magical Star Wars universe and more harder science fiction, you would say?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think there's elements of that, and I think there's obviously a clear difference between like fantasy. I mean, there's crossover, but there's also difference between fantasy and science fiction. And this book definitely leans more to that science fiction. Um, you're right on the money there. I'm a lot more into the fantasy mystical elements of
Mhm,
Star Wars. But I really kind of subscribe to the fact that Thrawn is this cunning genius.
mhm,
And I want to know more about it. So I
mhm,
think the tone of the book, like if we talk about it in context of like how like the Star Warsy magic feel,
mhm,
I I can't quite word, but it is there. I do feel it is there because
mhm,
it does have that very large world exploration, and there is a lot of notes of um kind of under he wanting to understand more about like especially like Palpatine. he wants Thrawn himself like wants to more understanding, and this is probably actually I'm kind of encroaching a little bit more into the second book here, but
That's
like
fine.
just understanding what the Force is, like that's just
Mhm.
kind of his perspective. He wants to understand that. So I think the tone is definitely more science fiction, but I didn't mind that at all for kind of a magical, mystical, focused Star Wars fan. I really didn't mind that tone of it's almost like a military like
Mhm.
I don't know what genre that would be, but like a
Military
almost like
sci-fi, I
yeah,
guess.
military sci-fi, like almost like a historical drama or something. I'm just gonna make that one up, but like a fictional history drama.
That's
Um,
mhm.
yeah.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting. I hope we can come back in a couple of maybe a month or a year or two if you ever start reading the Ascendancy book because those are like they go just full on out. Tim Zahn just off the rails. He gets to do his own
Is
thing.
he?
It's in the Star Wars universe, but it's like it's all about the chiss and all these other things. So
Yeah, yeah,
I would
right.
be very curious to see like when he gets to kind of no longer have even like tangential connections to Star Wars. It's kind of like this a whole separate universe. But yet Thrawn's there because it's his
Mm.
people. I'll be very
Yeah,
curious to
I wonder
see.
what I'll think about those. I'll definitely come back for that one. I'm sure I'll have many thoughts about that.
Yeah, because like I think what I and I guess I can my thoughts on the book.
Mm,
Because this is actually my favorite of the newer Tim Zahn stuff. My favorite of all his stuff is obviously the original 1991 Heir of the Empire and just that whole trilogy from that time
mm.
period. Um, but I think what's interesting is that I think this one is much more grounded in maybe not grounded in Star Wars in terms of like mystical and magical, but like, it's the Empire. You see Palpatine and Yularen and Tarkin and familiar faces.
Yeah.
So I think that familiarity definitely helps a lot. And I think just kind of showing Thrawn's methodical rise from just a random chiss to a Grand Admiral in the Empire certainly helps keep kind of a focus
Mm.
compared to later stuff.
It was so quick. And just on that, on his actual rise, like in the book, like
Mhm.
his journey, it's so quick. It's so quick. It's just like one minute they're like, "Who's this rogue man?" And then like like few chapters later, it's like, "Oh, he's in charge of everything." It's very funny. I was like, "Oh, this turned around quickly." Wow.
It's a fast rise. I do think it's supposed to take place over at least a couple years.
Yeah, I do
So
think it's over a few years, but I was like, "Wow, is this like like a few months?" Like, but then I think in context, I was like, "Oh no, I think this is like maybe 3, 4 years, maybe."
right. Yeah, I think
Mm,
so. But let's get to the actual origin. I didn't actually make tags for everything this time, so I'm just
origin.
making. Yeah.
That's
So here's a fun fact. More or
yes.
less, the beginning chapter or chapters is actually straight out of stuff from Legends. That's how Thrawn was found by the Empire in Legends.
Really?
Although I forget the names, like the captain guy finds Thrawn like this lost on the planet, and he's got the. And if you ever have you ever seen a have you ever look up Google like the comic version? Thrawn's got like this Fabio like hair. He got this long hair, got the shirtless
No way.
muscles,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
got
yeah.
muscles. It's
I'm
it's
gonna look
very like
that up.
good looking guy Thrawn. When
Yeah.
he was young and vibrant. Um, Surviving in the jungle, then they bring him back to, Coruscant. It's like, "Hey, Palpatine, we found this alien." It's like,
Right?
"Oh,
I
yeah,
love
right."
how it goes straight to Palpatine. It's like that seemed too easy to be just like, "Palpy, we got someone for you." Like that seemed too easy.
Well, this is an interesting thing as well because this is sort of Thrawn and I Thrawn's kind of Tim Zahn using Thrawn's Legends history as kind of the context, which I don't
Mm.
think necessarily helps unless you don't know the context of
Yeah, right.
Thrawn had Thrawn was in league with Sidious during the prequels. At least he knew of like Palpatine had contacted Thrawn during those times for reasons, for his own schemes. This whole
Mm.
book and legend called the Outbound Flight that involved Thrawn in some way, and Sidious was involved. It's a whole thing.
Wow.
Um, so Palpatine knew of Thrawn, so it's not like the two are like, who's this? Like Palpatine's not going, who's this random blue guy? It's like they
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
know each other.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and then Thrawn's like, hey, I know information about the unknown regions. You probably should know about this stuff. Um, but what did you make of just sort of the finding Thrawn of it all, just like in the jungle of I forget the planet's name.
Yeah, I forget the planet's name, but it was I think a really just fun way to be like, this is how he was found. I think it was very creative. I think
Mhm.
yeah, the idea that he was like stranded on this planet and he was just like, but he was like he somehow coaxed like the whole team of like stormtroopers and Imperials there, and he figured out how to like trap them all and do this and set all this off. I think it was one of those great just openings of a book, few chapters of a book to be like, this is how good this guy is as like a rogue, untrained guy, well, untrained for the Empire character. So really cool introduction. I think it was very kind of in it, almost in like a chaotic way. Um,
Mhm.
eh, having that knowledge and then seeing how like neat, like metaphorically and like literally neat and serious and composed he is to kind of meet him where he's like running rogue in a jungle is kind of fun. I think that's a really fun contrast to be like, oh, this is where he was when we first meet him. Um, so yeah, really cool introduction. I really like how that. I think it's yeah, super creative way to introduce his character.
His first exile, and it won't be his last. Oh, wink. Um,
That's so true. It's true. Oh, I love it.
he could do much more when he was young and vibrant.
That's true.
As we all.
Mhm.
As we all. But yeah, it is interesting. It's like, he's in exile. At least that's what we find out. He was in exile, and it won't be, and he didn't kind of lose his marbles though. He kind of kept himself kind of mentally fit as well as physically fit.
Mm.
Um, in terms of like, compared to like Darth Maul who got exiled and then he kind of went nuts. Spire Maul.
Yeah, ew, he went
Yeah,
mad, didn't he?
I know. And of course we meet the character of Eli Vanto. Um, so I'll throw it to you, Hannah. What do you think of Eli Vanto? Just off the cuff,
Oh,
Eli.
great guy. What a
Mhm,
fun, what a, like a little. I think this character was like really great to like relate to.
mhm,
Like he was trying his best, like at his
mhm,
dreams, but these kind of weird situations kept happening to him. I think that's probably why he was written. Like if anyone asks why did Timothy Zahn write Eli the way he did, I think it's almost like a point of reference for us to put ourselves in the position of Eli through the book.
mhm.
Because he's kind of alongside Thrawn with all these kind of escalating situations, and Thrawn's kind of, keeping him by his side to be like, "Come along." Um, so yeah, I think he's a really like enjoyable character. I think he's really relatable and yeah, just a really great perspective, and it definitely contrasts for Thrawn. And yeah, like I said, I think it's such a we are almost meant to read the book from Eli's perspective, if anything. Um, I really love the character.
It's
He's so great.
it's funny you say that because Tim Zahn has actively gone out and said he never writes a Thrawn book from Thrawn's perspective. He always wants to write Thrawn scenes from someone else's perspective.
That is so
Uh,
interesting.
because I forget exactly what he said. He says something along the lines of like Thrawn is so smart and clever, we can't comprehend it, or something like that. It's one of those
Oh
sorts of
yeah,
things. It's where
yeah.
it's like Thrawn is so smart, it's kind of better to kind of have the person who's watching Thrawn do
That's
the
so
things.
smart. Yeah. That makes
Uh,
sense. That makes
mhm,
so much sense. That's
mhm.
literally the vibe I got reading this book. Yes, 100%.
It's like that in the original Thrawn trilogy too. This what was Captain Pelion as the point
Oh.
of view character, because the whole idea is Thrawn is kind of an evil Sherlock Holmes, but Sherlock Holmes is
Mm,
so smart, none of us can comprehend it. So it's like we look through the eyes of Watson, and in 1991 it was
that's
Pelion,
true.
and now
Mm,
it's Eli Vanto.
that's such a good
Um,
point. Yeah. Oh,
but
wow.
yeah, Vanto is certainly an interesting one for certain. Sure, kind of seeing also what like a grunt in the empire is like, it's like
Mm,
just kind of wants to get through his day. I'm sure he's freaking out where it's like, it's like he's kind of the normal guy among these giants, right?
mm,
Like you got Thrawn, who's gonna be an up and comer, and then obviously the Emperor, who's like just in a plane of his own existence.
mm. And then we
And
got
yeah,
a
mhm.
little Eli there as well. Like, how did he get there? Like,
I
I think
know,
he's thinking that. He's like, how did I get here?
I know. It's like, well, and then it's like he can speak Chiss a little bit, so it's like, well. we're gonna pair you two together.
Right?
Um,
Classic.
so yeah, like I guess, how did you feel about Thrawn and Eli's relationship? Kind
Mm.
of watching those two kind of metaphorically rise together in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love how this played out. I think
Hmm.
because Thrawn is such like a emotionally distant character, it
Hmm.
was very interesting to see what his version of perhaps friendship would be like. Even
Hmm.
though it is like very professional and he wanted Eli for all these kind of strategic things,
Hmm.
I think like it's not a good friendship. He's not technically a good friend to Eli, but it's
Yeah.
just interesting to be like, he is so cold, like Thrawn is so cold, but it's like, is this him like trying to like the whole book? I'm like, is he trying to be Eli's like friend and like good friend? Like this is so interesting to read. Where I think Eli, I don't know what Eli thought of Thrawn. Like it's which is funny reading the book. I still don't. I'm like, is he? He's kind of he doesn't wanna be anywhere else, but also he's kind of like, "Why am I here?" In terms of, like, being with Thrawn. So it was really interesting to see kind of almost both of them be like especially after it's been, like, years, because the book does do those time jumps. They're kind of like, "How are we still together?" But then they are, like, they don't wanna separate, so it's which is super interesting. They're like, don't wanna be together, but also they, like, love and kind of have to do everything together. So, it's very interesting, it's very interesting.
It's interesting. Um, I also think it's interesting, kind of, and I'll try to say this more for the end, but I'll definitely want to kind of have you kind of think about it too. Is it's interesting in the context of other Thrawn stories because Eli, you're right. I think Eli is kind of the closest thing Thrawn's kind of ever nice to in
Mm,
terms of his
yeah,
subordinates,
for sure,
where
for sure.
we don't really get a sense in the other stuff, especially mostly on screen stuff. Thrawn cares about his subordinates or even likes them to any particular extent outside of, you're my subordinate minion, whatever, do what I tell you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I feel like there's almost a patience with Eli, and like they kind of are in this together, and it's kind of interesting. And I don't know. I'll just say this, and this is kind of me coming at it from like a wider perspective. I'm never quite sure how to feel about it
Mm, yes.
because you know what? We'll just talk about it a little bit now. Although we try to avoid talking about the stuff because of the strike, but where we can kind of tiptoe, we can talk about
We
rebels.
can tiptoe, we can tiptoe.
But it's sort of like you see Thrawn kind of being somewhat nice to Eli. In that kind of cold, almost logic sense. I mean, I don't know if you watch Star Trek, Hannah,
I
but
haven't, no.
okay, well,
I've seen
it's
some of it.
well, from my Trekkie fans out there, it's kind of like a more evil or harsher version of Spock. Although Spock is way more embracing of his human side, while like Thrawn just like it's like someone who does Thrawn. I don't want to, gotta be careful here. It's like Thrawn doesn't understand emotions, and he's a very logical person. But at the same
Mm,
time, we're seeing this compassion from him in a little bit compared
mm,
to what we've seen in the other stuff, where I get the sense he doesn't care about his other minions that we've seen, the people next to him, or he kind of outright makes them seem stupid when they say something like he thinks is dumb. It's like, like, well, you're stupid, Governor Price, and we'll get to her later.
ugh, oh, yeah.
Or like, oh well, actually, I can talk about Rebels a lot more. Like, by the end, like Thrawn's just so tired of Price. Like, I'm gonna get rid of you when I come back,
Mm,
because you blew up my factory. So the Thrawn and the screen stuff, and we've talked about this a lot on the show. There's Thrawn has a bit more of a ruthless streak on the screen stuff, where he's almost like he almost I almost feel like Thrawn would look at something like friendship and like, like you're doing all this for your friend and like that's stupid. And yet here he's
mm.
like very nice to almost the closest thing to nice to his friend. So I wonder, Hannah, did you have that in mind in your head where it's like you were reading Thrawn's relationship with others and like,
Mm.
he's a lot nicer in this book than he's ever been on the other stuff I've watched him in. So was that like disconcerting, or
Yeah.
did you try to? How did you kind of comprehend?
Yeah, it's interesting, and especially on this thing of, like, compassion and emotions. Does he understand emotions? I it's the same in the book. I still have this perspective of the book where it's like he understood emotions and he understood friendship and having relationships and friendships with people, but he knows it almost the opposite, where he understands them too well and is like, that's not beneficial to my goal, and he chooses not to, you know, have really great, a group of friends or whatever. It's all the strategic, cynical side. So I think, yeah, was he nicer? Was he more compassionate in the book? I don't think so. I think that we got more understanding of, I think, where his cynicism comes from and where his seriousness comes from,
Mhm.
which kind of opened this door of, oh, he kind of understands that exists. He's just choosing not to, like, actively be a friendly, like, happy, nice guy, and a great boss. Like, he's not actively choosing that. Um He's choosing not to do that, but it's kind of inside of him, but he's like, "No, like, that's not beneficial. Having friendships, isn't beneficial to me. Like, it's just something he doesn't care about." But is he more maybe open in the books? Perhaps, perhaps.
He's a lot more, I feel, generous with Eli compared to kind of his two other subordinates we've seen on screen so far.
Mm,
In terms of getting a little more personal with them. I mean, they
that's a good
share a
point,
bed,
yeah.
they share a dorm room together, so it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
um, you know, and also maybe, and this is just kind of me projecting on other things. I'll use where I feel like maybe I don't know. Like I feel like Thrawn seems like the kind of guy who doesn't see equals. I feel like, he
Mm,
kind of has a bit of that, "Oh, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you," and to be
a
fair, he
little
kind of
bit,
is.
yeah.
Kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
is. Like, there are some moments recently and some stuff where it's like, gives a look of like, "Don't be stupid. I'm smarter here.
Mm,
I'm the smart one here." With Bell and, like, Pelion, like, I'll give you Pelion in the 1991 novel, there's very
mm.
much that, "I'm the commander, you're the subordinate. I'm gonna respect you if I think you have a good idea, but for the most part, I'm smarter than you, Pelion, so don't say stupid stuff." While with
Yeah,
Eli, I
yeah.
always felt, at least kind of remembering what I remember there, I don't think he just sees Eli like a tactical equal, but I do think there is a bit more than he's my subordinate, do what I say kind of a situation.
Mm,
Like I don't think there's like a 100% master servant relationship. At least that's my interpretation
mm.
of their
Be I think it's not because, like, I agree with you because, he like, subtly, he always has Eli's best interest at heart. Like, he
Mhm.
always tries to make kind of the right decisions in front of Eli. So, yeah, I totally agree. It's like, it's not completely like you're nothing and expendable. It's not completely that, which I think is bizarre for Thrawn. I think that's why we're like having, like, this is like a point of conversation because it's like, oh, is this a show of goodwill? Like, what is this?
Well, yeah, and that's kind of funny seeing expendable. And again, I got to tiptoe around it a little bit, but we are seeing recently Thrawn does see people as expendable.
Yeah, true, exactly.
He
It's like he does do that. Yeah.
he literally's like, we have some new people with us, but I don't care. Our job, we have a goal. If they die or we have to ditch them, we'll
Yeah.
ditch them. I don't care. I probably would,
Yeah, right?
if he wasn't a moron, he'd
Oh,
probably go, I
it's
ditch you
funny.
too. And like, well, just
Mm.
ditch everybody, get out of here.
Yeah.
So it is kind of interesting kind of seeing with this one character at least someone who Ron kind of did help his career. He did kind
Yeah,
of
that's what I mean. He's, like, trying to, like, do good things and, like, help him out. Yeah, it's interesting.
yeah.
Oh.
But that's sort of an interest. I think their relationship is interesting, Eli and Thrawn, and obviously where Eli ends up with Chiss. It's kind of interesting, and I do hope this is something that Tim Zahn gets to continue on. And it's something a little semi spoilers, but something you'll notice, Hannah, is like Thrawn's kind of putting his allies and people in positions with this whole Chiss thing that he kind of trusts above other people to kind of for this bigger thing is that whole unknown regions are dangerous and scary.
Mm.
Um, I guess actually, Hannah, and this is something I don't think the book goes in too much, but I do wonder. This is something that's always been sort of interesting among book fans, especially. Is there's a divide between people who say Thrawn's a villain and Thrawn's an
Oh.
anti-hero. And this has always been kind of a thing of, and this is very much a thing of like Tim Zahn probably sees Thrawn more of an anti-hero, and then Dave obviously sees Thrawn as a full-on villain, as we've seen in Rebels and other stuff that we can't talk about. I'm doing
Yeah.
such a good job, and I'm
You're
kind of
doing a great
curious.
job.
I'm kind of curious, Hannah. Hey, have you seen this discussion going on
Yes.
your socials?
Yes.
And also, kind of, are you kind of able to sort of merge the two things that you've seen together, or do you think there is that sort of separation? It depends on who's writing it at the time. 'Cause I'm more I think it depends on who's writing it at
Yeah.
the time myself, but have you sort of mixed it in your brain?
Yes, I have. It's an interesting discussion. And what I mean, just before I get into what I think, I think it was a few weeks ago, maybe I did a poll, I think on YouTube and Twitter and just some places about like, is Thrawn a villain?
Mhm.
And the two, I think there was three options. It's like, yes, he's a villain, no, he's misunderstood, or he's an anti-hero. I think that's the was the three. And each section of people for whoever voted for what was so confident and was like, every other answer is completely incorrect. Like, it was just so like, how can
Sure.
anyone even think he's an anti-hero? And then the anti-hero people were like, how can anyone think he's a villain? So it's such an interesting discussion because I think people have such black and white perspectives on it, where I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit in the middle because
You're the Bendu.
I'm the Bendu. Oh yes, the Bendu.
The Bendu.
I love the Bendu. Yeah, because he's a villain because he is behaving against the interests of what we have as protagonists.
Right.
But I also understand the anti-hero perspective because he also I mean, a lot more subtly, there's a lot more technical, but he's not like go the Empire. Like, he is surfacely, but deep down he has all these goals and desires of the Chiss, and that's his priority and all those kinds of things. So it's not like he's fully he wants to make the Empire his number one. So it's like, well, and that's technically the villain, especially in this era we're speaking of like his existence. That's the villain, and he's not fully into it as much as he's a Grand Admiral of it. It's like he's not fully, his heart isn't there. So it's like, oh, would that make him not a villain? So I can definitely see where it's like such a muddy discussion. But I'm a bit more on the side that he is a villain in the sense that he's against our protagonist's best interests. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the divide there. I'm kind of more on the side of he's a villain because, because especially now, because it's sort of like, well, if the Empire is gone, why are you still sticking with these people? Why do you still have the stormtroopers?
Yeah,
why
so true. That's
why
so true.
Why are you using dark magic? Like, what happened? What we care about? Just like, just go to the New Republic. They're now the stronger ones, technically. Like, you hate democracy. I guess Thrawn hates democracy.
Do you hate democracy? Yeah.
Thrawn's the opposite of Palpatine. Goes, I hate democracy. I hate the Republic.
True.
Palpatine loved democracy, and he loved the Republic. We all know this. This is a fact. I'm kidding. So in that sense, it's like, I think. I mean, ultimately, I think the thing is, compared to these Thrawn books these are very Thrawn centric stories. Well, the non-Thrawn books aren't Thrawn-centric stories. They are Rebels is Ezra's story. Ahsoka is Ahsoka. Wait, Ahsoka. Well, that's okay. Ahsoka is Ahsoka and Sabine's story. That's my cat's tail.
Do you have a loath cat there? Joel? Come on.
I do. I have a little low cat.
I
The
love it.
original 91 is a Luke story. So Thrawn has these. So I think even though we're seeing it from Thrawn's perspective, I think there's not anyone really to challenge him and go, "Hey, you're still an authoritarian dude who's not going to let people have the freedoms." So
Exactly.
gonna have someone like Luke Skywalker to say, like, "Hey, that's not good, Thrawn. You can't, you can't do this. You can't use the Force this way. That's not how the Force works."
100%.
You're
100%.
messing with
It's
the natural order.
so fascinating.
It
Mm.
it is. But we talked about Thrawn for a little bit. Let's kind of, and I know this is something actually. So here's where we kind of differ. And I know you didn't like these parts as much, but I actually love these
Yeah.
parts. I actually like the parts with Governor Price quite a bit. Um, I just
Well,
found. Oh wait, go ahead.
sorry,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
continue. No, you
But
go, you go.
yeah, because I felt like this is. I always like seeing characters who don't really seem like they're going to get much expanded upon this stuff. I thought
Mm.
it was kind of interesting, kind of trying to give Governor Price more of a well-rounded character than just I'm the evil governor who sits next to Thrawn and does evil things and makes Thrawn look
Mm.
smart. Because I'm the more classic fire everything kind of character.
Yeah.
Um, I thought it was interesting also giving character like Governor Ramadi. Is it Ramadi? It's the bearded governor, looked like Santa. And played by
Oh, yeah.
Nancy Brown.
Remind
Um,
yeah.
Governor Ramadi kind of giving him more of a shady pass as well, and there's like the Lothal intrigue. Um,
Mm.
so I found that was interesting as well, and kind of
Mm.
seeing how she and Thrawn kind of met. And maybe in some ways, maybe this is what Tim Zahn was doing. And I don't know if it's like I can really say this, like if Eli's like the angel on Thrawn's shoulder, then Governor Price is like the devil, kind of pushing Thrawn a little closer towards those imperial tendencies,
Mm.
while Eli is just I'm your pal, or at least I'm your reluctant friend, while Governor Price is like the more
Reluctant
classic
friend.
power hungry
Mm.
imperial, and Thrawn's kind of like in this middle zone of like just kind of just kind of just today I gotta use Price because that's what today's tactics require, and then gonna go back to Eli. So I
Mm.
always thought that was interesting and as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Governor Price. I don't know what let me get my words together here. I enjoyed what her story and the elements of her story in this book added. And I
Mhm.
enjoyed that it was this little kind of B plot going along. And I thought it was quite interesting. We actually got to kind of go through quite a bit of Coruscant stuff as well. She like dealt a lot on Coruscant, which is actually I really enjoyed reading about that. Um, I think I think it's more I find that character grating. Like I think I find Commander Price or Governor Price, like her character is grating to me. So that's why I'm like, oh, more of you. But maybe it's hard to do to like say with villainous characters. It's like, are they annoying because they're a really good villain, or are they annoying because you just like maybe just don't like that character? So it's really funny. Um, I can appreciate what her kind of B plot in through this book did for just I mean I think overall for the book it kind of broke up a lot of the heavy
Oh,
parts.
which
Oh,
Foggy?
where did I go? Where did I
Ah,
go?
where'd you
Hang on.
go, Foggy? Hello.
This is hilarious.
Oh no, technical difficulties, people.
I was on such a good rant as well.
I
There we
know.
go.
There we go.
Oh, we're back, baby. Woo, that
We're
was
back.
stressful.
Woohoo.
Classic. Price. Yeah, I think it was like a good having this B story,
Mhm.
but I don't know why I didn't love it. I think I personally don't like the character of Commander Price, but yeah, I think it added some cool elements though. There was some cool storytelling happening with her little storyline there. Like
Yeah.
were they on Lothal at the end there, where they were doing the whole?
No, it was a
What am I
city
thinking
planet
of?
called Batum.
Maybe it's that one. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. With the parents? The parents?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Um. So that.
Yeah,
But what
interesting.
did you think of Thrawn's just interactions with just Price, but also the other Imperials like Yularen, good old Governor,
Yeah.
Admiral Yularen again, and
Mm.
just kind of what did you make of Thrawn's whole "he doesn't do politics" great kind of thing?
I think they did that very well, and I think that showed it explains it all so well, and I think, yes, I mean, specifically, like, reading how they all got kind of, acquainted with each other and connected with each other was really interesting. Um, and I do like how it gives a couple of different shades to what different people in the empire like. You have like each of those names, they all kind of have a slightly different approach, slightly different like perspective that they bring to the empire. As much as the empire is painted this um very everyone's got to be the same shade of gray, everyone's got to be the same like thought pattern, and very regimented. I think when you kind of get, and especially in the books, and like this book, we get to see the kind of perspectives of each character, like, you know, just those three, like Thrawn, Yularen, Price, and even like throw Eli in there. They all have very slightly different perspectives of what they bring to the Empire and the kind of imperial ranks. So, I don't know what I forget what the question was, but
I just what Thrawn's
I enjoy
interaction with
seeing.
them was.
Yeah, Thrawn's interaction with them. Well, yeah, kind of going off what I just said there, I think it gives good contrast, and I think it shows Thrawn's a lot more just confident and cutthroat and serious, and he initiates a lot more, where I think other people are a little bit slower and a bit more kind of hesitant of things, where Thrawn's like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, this is what I'm doing as a commander, as a general, as a Grand Admiral. So,
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said with the idea of, what we're seeing, especially now, is an older Thrawn. Kind of, he's no longer this wet behind the ears. He is now he's gone through the ringer. He's kind of any sort of innocence maybe he had with like Eli and stuff is sort of gone now, and he is just full on utilitarian. I'm just gonna do what needs to be done. And that's dangerous because now the good guy got to stop him, because like what needs to be done sometimes requires bloodiness and not nice things to happen.
100%, 100%.
So we covered quite a lot about this book, but I guess finally we can talk about what did you think of the villain, the villain, Thrawn's villain, Night Swan, the rebel character?
Night Swan. I love the Night Swan. Yeah, I thought this was such a great feeling, because I did think they're coming into the book. I'm like, who are we against? Who are we got to be against here? And the Night Swan was a really fun villain. I liked how he was so like, we especially coming in at this point, we all know Thrawn's so clever, but the whole book, it's like he can't figure out who the hell this is. That's kind of fun. It's not it is a long kind of a long period of time, but he couldn't figure it out for the chapters we were reading through it. So I think that was really tasteful, really engaging. I think it was really interesting. I think the ending, actually, I think I said this in my review video. I think maybe I felt like the ending could have been a little bit more climactic at the end with finding Night Swan and that like just the whole ending of the book. But it was entertaining. I liked how they threaded it through the whole book. It was really well done. I liked it.
Yeah, I think I would have liked something a bit more like an argument of sorry, my cat's all over the place right now. Is Thrawn's goal something worthwhile or not? Like, Thrawn's whole thing is like, hey, if the Emperor dies, I can use my influence and get a better Emperor. I kind of wish there was more of an argument of like, well, if there's such a thing as a better Emperor when you have an evil empire that just wants to control everybody, like, is that even possible? I mean, I think that kind of shows a little naivety of Thrawn, because like, yeah, Palpatine's gonna just get old and die. Like, he can, like, even if he can blow up, so you think Palpatine's not gonna let that happen? He got his clones. He got all sorts of things ready to go.
He's set up. He's good to go.
But even then, it's sort of the argument of like, ooh, I'm just gonna have a nice emperor, and then things will be better. Then I feel like I kind of wish the book kind of would go into the idea of like, is that a bit naive of you, Thrawn, to think the Empire can get better? Like, is there such a thing as a good empire? And the answer is, my opinion, is no.
No. Yeah, I agree.
So that's why I lean more on the Thrawn's still technically a villain kind of situation, because it's sort of like, I don't think he's a good guy. And he's like, he's not.
Yeah, he's not like he's not like, I want to better help everyone in the right sense of the word. Like, he's not really, because I think actually back to what you mentioned earlier, you said at the line of like, he doesn't see people as equals. I think that's actually really key of like why he is in the realm of a villain, because it's like he doesn't see everyone as equals. Very interesting.
Very interesting. So I guess as we enter final thoughts, and we talked a little about this earlier, but I'm just kind of curious, Hannah, reading this book, did this change any of your perspective on the character from what you've seen, especially since it's more of an origin to Rebels? Did it change your perspective about Rebels? You could, I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about tiptoe around the newer stuff, like has your perspective change, or do you like? What was your thoughts on Thrawn before reading this book, and kind of what is your thoughts on Thrawn as as a character after this book in terms of how you view
Mm,
him?
that's a great question. I think maybe perspective hasn't changed all that much. I haven't gone, "Oh my god, he's actually this kind of person." It hasn't been a big shift, but
Hmm.
I think I do appreciate more of the nuance of what he does and how he thinks.
Hmm.
And it's been interesting reading this book and then going back and watching. I want to do a full rewatch, but just watching certain episodes and arcs of not Clone Wars, of Rebels,
Hmm.
and seeing him in Rebels again, being like, he has all this experience and he's had all these like exchanges with people and met different people like in this scene, and kind of having that in the back of the mind has been really interesting to be like, oh, he's so involved in many ways and he has been for quite a while in the time of Rebels of when we're seeing him. So yeah, I think it's less of a shift. I don't think I was like, oh, he's totally different, but it's definitely I probably appreciate his experience a lot more because that's very much in Rebels. It's like I've gone through a lot of things, and you don't really know what they are. Where the books explaining all that of like all his experience and where all that comes from. So yeah, an in depth, a deepening understanding.
Yeah, if I had one major critique though, I feel like the book doesn't do enough for me. Again, this is my own personal thing of kind of showing Thrawn become more and more ruthless as time goes on. Because like I don't remember how much of the Rebels finale do you remember just off the top of your
Oh
head?
yeah, like a fair amount.
Like there's a whole moment where Thrawn just goes, like bombard the city, just do it, kill
Mm,
civilians are there, bombard it. I
mm,
I feel like there wasn't enough of, Thrawn the kind of character. Like, I feel like there's not enough of, like, Thrawn goes from doesn't wanna, like, have inflict civilian casualties to now Thrawn just like now the rest of the Imperials. He's totally okay with civilian casualties and causing massacres if he has to.
mm.
You have to get things dirty, and I kinda wish we just got a little bit more of that kind of
Yeah.
seeds of Thrawn's ruthlessness so it connects to Rebels a bit more, in my opinion, but yeah, but I
Mm.
agree. I think it's definitely an interesting kind of rise origin story for sure. But yeah, any final thoughts on this book on Thrawn
Yeah.
2017?
Final thoughts. I think I got to call back to what I said just midway through the show. Of this is such a great book for especially people that were introduced to Thrawn via Rebels, and they
Mhm.
want to like he's a really interesting character of Rebels, and you want to know more about him. This is such a perfect book to read. I think after Rebels, because it really expands kind of like what we hit on there. Like it just expands and deepens so much of his character and his kind of evil experiences and how he got to where he was. So I think this book was written really well. I think the book was a really good journey. We got to see a lot. There was quite a few time jumps. We got to like go through different kind of periods of where he was at,
Mhm.
and it just adds so much nuance to his character. And the conversation of does he feel compassion? I don't know, but I think you can definitely gain a lot from reading this book and wanting to know more about him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. I think this is a good book to read, especially after you watch Rebels.
Mm.
But yeah, that's it for our discussion. But before we just wrap
Yeah.
things up, I just want to shout out some comments. The Jedi Force podcast. Oh, this was a question for you. At the Rayside, aren't you supposed to be blue, or did I misread the time?
In a minute, in a minute, I'll be blue.
I can't wait to see you be blue. I have a
Oh, let's
cute badge.
go.
We couldn't do this afterward. That would have
I
been.
know, but I was like, it would be so hard. If imagine me just a full face of blue right now, being like, "Yeah, the book was really interesting." Like, it would
That
be
would have
so
been.
hard to be serious.
Oh, I'm sure, but it would have been
Oh,
fun.
I love it. Oh.
You're gonna be a Blu-ray.
Oh, yes. I'm coming to Blu-ray. That's hilarious.
Hope
That's
you're
so
not
well done.
expensive. Austin James
Box
only
set.
says do absolutes. Yeah,
100%.
just a couple one. And more Blu-ray jokes.
Oh,
Of
I
course.
love it. The gang. Love them.
But yeah, thank you, Hannah, for joining us.
Thank you so
Um,
much.
and all right, and of course, as always, everybody, you can follow us at the Ion Cannon Pod. At the Ion Cannon Pod, Hannah, where can they follow you?
You can follow me at the Rayside, RAE side. That is on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram. Oh, Twitter. X. I should call it X. I'm never going to call it X, but Twitter and Instagram it's the same as well. So head on over there for lots of chaos and Star Wars fun.
Yep, and you can follow me at JID2021 on Twitter, but mostly you can always follow me on Discord at the Star Wars Underworld Discord. Join us Friday. We're going to play some
So much fun.
Fortnite or game night. It's going to be lots of fun. Master should be back next week, and we should be talking some comics again. We're going to keep looking back at all sorts of things. But until next time, everyone, thank you for joining us, and let's blow this thing and head
Let's go.
home.